Okay, I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people feel, but nobody says out loud because it sounds like you're attacking religion,
Which you're not.
which I'm explicitly not. But here's the thing. Have you ever looked at a politician standing at a pulpit, Bible in hand, and thought, this guy doesn't believe a single word of this,
Every single time.
right? And it's not just an American thing. It's not just a Christian thing. It's like there's this playbook, and it's ancient, and it works every single time. The playbook is find the most fervent believers in any religion and use them.
And the key word there is use. Because what we're talking about isn't religion being inherently political. Religion is always intersected with politics. That's fine. That's normal. What we're talking about is a very specific phenomenon where political actors who are often privately secular, sometimes openly contemptuous of faith, deliberately cultivate and weaponize religious hardliners to achieve goals that have nothing to do with God.
Useful believers.
Useful believers. And you can trace this pattern back literally thousands of years.
So let's start there. Because everyone knows the story of Rome and Christianity, right? Persecuted faith, underground churches, lions eating people in the Colosseum.
The Sunday school version.
Exactly. And then Constantine comes along and boom, Christianity goes from illegal to the state religion. And everyone tells that story like it's this beautiful moment of truth winning out.
But that's not what happened. What happened was a political calculation. Rome was fracturing. You had this enormous empire with dozens of competing cults and religions and ethnic identities. And the thing that was holding it together, Roman civic religion, emperor worship, was losing its grip. People weren't buying it anymore.
So Constantine looked around and said, what's the fastest growing franchise?
Essentially, yes. Christianity had something Rome desperately needed: organizational structure, moral cohesion, a built-in hierarchy of bishops and deacons, and most importantly, a narrative that could unify people across ethnic and class lines. There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free. That's incredibly useful if you're trying to hold an empire together.
So it wasn't, I saw a cross in the sky and converted. It was, I see a cross in the sky and I see a org chart.
And look at what happened next. The Council of Nicaea, 325 AD. Constantine literally chairs a meeting to decide what Christians believe. An emperor, deciding theology. Not because he cared about the nature of the Trinity, but because he needed doctrinal unity for political unity. The Arian controversy wasn't a theological problem to him, it was a management problem.
That's wild when you put it that way. The guy running the empire is like, okay, is Jesus the same substance as God or similar substance? Let's vote. I need this settled by Friday.
And that pattern, political power reaching into religion and shaping it from the inside to serve political ends, that never stopped. It just kept evolving.
Which brings us to the Reformation.
Oh, the Reformation is the masterclass.
Because everyone learns it as Martin Luther nails his 95 Theses to the door. He's angry about corruption. Boom. Protestantism. Good guys versus bad guys.
And Luther's theological complaints were real. The sale of indulgences was genuinely corrupt. But here's what they don't teach you in school. The Reformation succeeded not because of theology. It succeeded because of politics. German princes saw Protestantism as a way to break free from Rome's political and financial control. Every prince who converted got to seize Catholic Church properties, stop sending money to the Pope, and consolidate power.
So it's like Henry VIII didn't break from Rome because he had a deep theological disagreement about papal authority.
He wanted a divorce, and he wanted monastery land. That's it. He literally created an entire branch of Christianity so he could remarry and seize property. And he's not the exception, he's the template.
The template, I love that, because that's what we keep seeing. The template is, I have a political goal, I find religious energy that I can redirect toward that goal. And the believers think they're fighting for God, but they're actually fighting for me.
And this is where I want to be really precise. The believers are genuine. Their faith is real. Their passion is real. That's what makes them useful. You can't weaponize apathy. You weaponize conviction.
That's the dark part. The sincerity is the feature, not the bug.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's fast forward. Because I think a lot of Americans assume the religious right has always been around. Like, evangelicals have always been this massive political force, right?
No. And this is maybe the most important thing we'll talk about today, because the religious right as a political movement was manufactured. It was built deliberately by specific people for specific reasons. And the reason wasn't abortion.
Wait, hold on. Because that's what everyone thinks. Roe v. Wade, 1973, evangelicals got angry, the moral majority was born.
That's the story they tell. But it's not true. Here's what actually happened. After the Civil Rights Act and desegregation, a network of private Christian academies, segregation academies, popped up across the South. They were explicitly created so white families could pull their kids out of integrated public schools.
Oh,
In 1971, the IRS started revoking the tax-exempt status of these schools because they were discriminating based on race. Green v. Connolly. Bob Jones University was the big one. They literally banned interracial dating and lost their tax exemption. And that is what mobilized evangelical leaders. Not abortion. Tax status for segregated schools.
so the spark that lit the religious right was racism.
The spark was racism being made financially inconvenient. And here's where the architects come in. Paul Weyrich, co-founder of the Heritage Foundation, the guy who literally said, "I don't want everybody to vote," he'd been trying to mobilize evangelicals for years. He tried school prayer, he tried pornography, he tried the Equal Rights Amendment. Nothing stuck. But when the IRS came for the tax exemptions, suddenly he had an issue that got pastors angry. Real, visceral, the government is attacking our institutions angry.
And that's when he teams up with Jerry Falwell.
1979, they create the moral majority. But they can't run on, "We want to keep our schools segregated." That's not a winning message. So they need a rebrand. And abortion, which evangelicals had been largely indifferent to, by the way, the Southern Baptist Convention passed a resolution in 1971 supporting abortion access in certain cases. Abortion becomes the new banner.
Wait, the Southern Baptists were pro-choice in 1971?
They weren't pro-choice in the modern sense, but they were far more moderate than people realize. The resolution called for legislation allowing abortion in cases of rape, incest, severe fetal deformity, and carefully ascertained evidence of the likelihood of damage to the emotional, mental, and physical health of the mother. W.A. Criswell, the former SBC president, one of the most powerful pastors in America, said after Roe v. Wade, and I'm quoting, "I have always felt that it was only after a child was born and had a life separate from its mother that it became an individual person."
That is, I genuinely did not know that.
Most people don't, because the story got rewritten. Weyrich and Falwell and the other architects took the genuine energy of religious conservatives and redirected it. The real grievance was racial. The public grievance became moral. And millions of sincere believers, people who genuinely cared about unborn life, got recruited into a movement whose original architects were motivated by something very different.
Useful believers.
Useful believers.
And speaking of the Southern Baptists, can we talk about the founding of the SBC? Because this one blew my mind.
The Southern Baptist Convention was founded in 1845. The specific reason, and they were explicit about this at the time, was that the National Baptist Mission Boards wouldn't appoint slaveholders as missionaries. Southern Baptists split off specifically to defend the institution of slavery as biblically ordained.
And they didn't apologize for this until
1995, 150 years later. We lament and repudiate historic acts of evil such as slavery. 1995, the same year TLC released Waterfalls.
the timeline is just staggering when you lay it out like that.
And again, this isn't about the millions of sincere Southern Baptists who attend church every Sunday and genuinely love their communities. It's about the institutional architecture, who built it and why, and what it was designed to do.
Okay, let's go global. Because this isn't just an American thing. You mentioned the playbook is universal.
Let's talk about Saudi Arabia. In the 1740s, Muhammad ibn Saud, a minor tribal leader in the Najd region, makes a pact with Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, a fundamentalist preacher.
So it's the same trade. Political power in exchange for religious enforcement.
Exact same trade. And that pact, from the 1740s, is still the foundation of the Saudi state today. The House of Saud rules, and the Wahhabi clerical establishment provides legitimacy. But here's where it gets really consequential. After the oil boom, Saudi Arabia had hundreds of billions of dollars. And they spent a significant portion of it exporting Wahhabism globally, funding madrasas, mosques, textbooks, preachers, from Pakistan to Indonesia to Europe to the United States.
And this is the version of Islam that a lot of Westerners think is just Islam.
Right. And that's the tragedy. There were vibrant, diverse Islamic traditions across the Muslim world. Sufi traditions, rationalist traditions, mystical traditions. And Saudi oil money systematically displaced them with the most rigid, literalist, politically useful interpretation. Not because it was truer, because it was funded.
So a political family in Arabia made a deal with a preacher 300 years ago. And because of oil money, that deal reshaped Islam worldwide.
That is not an exaggeration. That is a factual description of what happened.
Let's keep going global because the pattern really is everywhere. Modi in India?
Narendra Modi rose through the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which is a Hindu nationalist organization founded in 1925. Modi's BJP has systematically used Hindu nationalism to consolidate power in a country that was founded as an explicitly secular republic. And the same trait applies. Genuine Hindu cultural pride and identity gets channeled into a political project that benefits specific economic and political interests.
Erdogan in Turkey.
Turkey was founded by Ataturk as a militantly secular state. Erdogan has spent 20 years systematically reintroducing Islamic identity into Turkish politics. Not because he's a great theologian, but because it's an incredibly effective way to build a loyal base. He converted Hagia Sophia back into a mosque. That wasn't a religious decision. That was a political signal.
Netanyahu and the ultra-Orthodox.
Netanyahu has spent his career building coalitions with ultra-Orthodox parties whose views he doesn't share. He's a secular nationalist. But he needs their seats in the Knesset, so he grants them exemptions from military service, funds their yeshivas, and defers to them on religious law. The ultra-Orthodox get material benefits. Netanyahu gets power. And the secular majority of Israelis pays the cost.
Putin and the Russian Orthodox Church.
Putin, a former KGB officer trained in an explicitly atheist state, has rebuilt the Russian Orthodox Church as a pillar of state power. The Church blesses his wars, sanctifies his authority, and provides a narrative of Russian civilizational uniqueness that justifies everything from invading Ukraine to suppressing LGBTQ rights. Patriarch Kirill literally called the invasion of Ukraine a metaphysical struggle. And Putin, the guy who spent his formative years in an organization that demolished churches, nods along solemnly.
So the pattern is just, it's everywhere. It's every religion, every region, every era. Find the believers. Use the believers. Discard the believers when they stop being useful.
And here's what I think is the most insidious part. The part that affects people's daily lives. All of this, the culture war stuff, the religious identity politics, functions as a massive economic distraction.
Oh, this is the part that makes me want to flip a table.
Think about it structurally. In the United States, a white evangelical factory worker in Ohio and a black Baptist warehouse worker in Georgia have almost identical economic interests. They need health care, they need living wages, they need affordable housing, they need their kids to have decent schools. They are natural economic allies.
But they'll never vote together.
They will never vote together. Because one has been told that the other is a threat to their values, their way of life, their faith, and vice versa. The culture war keeps people who should be building economic solidarity fighting each other over identity.
It's like, imagine you and I both work at the same company. The boss is underpaying both of us. But instead of us going to the boss together and saying, pay us more, the boss gets us arguing about whether the break room should have a cross on the wall.
And while we're arguing about the cross, he cuts our benefits.
That's literally what's happening.
Thomas Frank wrote about this 20 years ago in What's the Matter with Kansas? The question was, why do working class people vote against their own economic interests? And the answer was, because the economic argument gets displaced by the cultural argument. Every election cycle, the cultural issues get amplified. Abortion, guns, immigration, trans rights, and the economic issues that would actually unite people across racial and religious lines get buried.
And the people amplifying those cultural issues are the ones who benefit from the economic status quo.
Almost without exception.
So why does it work? Like psychologically, why do smart, genuine, good-hearted people fall for this over and over and over again?
Because it's not about intelligence, it's about something much deeper. It's about identity and belonging. Humans are tribal. We evolved in small groups where in-group loyalty was literally a survival mechanism. Religion taps into that at the deepest level. It provides community, meaning, identity, a sense of where you belong in the cosmos.
So when someone comes along and says, your community is under threat,
your entire identity feels under threat. It's not a policy disagreement at that point. It's existential. And that's why rational arguments don't work. You can show someone all the data in the world about economic policy and it won't penetrate, because the fear isn't about economics. The fear is about losing who you are.
the fear of the other.
The fear of the other. And it's so easy to trigger. Every demagogue in history has used the same formula. Identify an outgroup, tell your people that the outgroup threatens everything they hold sacred, and position yourself as the protector. It works whether the outgroup is Jews in 1930s Germany, Muslims in Modi's India, immigrants in Trump's America, or secularists in Erdogan's Turkey.
And genuine religion. The real stuff, the love your neighbor, feed the hungry, care for the stranger stuff, gets hollowed out in the process.
That's the cruelest irony. The people who are most hurt by this exploitation are the genuine believers, because their faith gets reduced to a political brand. Their communities get hijacked by grifters, and the things their religion actually calls them to do, justice, mercy, compassion, get subordinated to a political agenda that usually contradicts all of those values.
So is there a way out? Because I don't want to end on we're all screwed and the powerful will always manipulate the faithful.
I think there are three things that consistently break the cycle historically. The first is education. And I don't mean just school. I mean exposure to the actual history. When people learn how their movements were manufactured, it doesn't destroy their faith, but it inoculates them against manipulation.
Like knowing how a magic trick works. You can still enjoy magic, but you can't be fooled by that specific trick anymore.
Exactly. The second is economic security. When people aren't afraid, when they have stable jobs, healthcare, housing, the fear-based appeals lose their power. The "they're taking what's yours" message doesn't land when you feel like you have enough.
You can't scare someone into a culture war when they're not already scared about their rent.
Right. Scarcity is the prerequisite for manipulation. And the third, and this is the simplest and most powerful, is exposure to the other. When you actually know someone from the outgroup, when the Muslim is your neighbor, when the gay person is your cousin, when the immigrant is your coworker, the dehumanization stops working. Every study on this shows the same thing. Contact reduces prejudice. Real contact, not performative diversity. Actual human relationships.
Which is why the people running the playbook always want segregation. Not just physical, informational. They need you to never actually meet the people they're telling you to fear.
And that's why I think the internet is both the biggest threat and the biggest opportunity here. It can create information bubbles that reinforce tribalism, but it can also connect you to people you'd never otherwise meet. The question is, which tendency wins?
So to bring it all the way back, the point isn't that religion is the problem.
The point is that cynicism is the problem. The point is that throughout history, people with power have identified sincere believers and used their sincerity as fuel for projects those believers would reject if they understood them fully. Constantine didn't care about the Trinity. Henry VIII didn't care about papal authority. Paul Weyrich didn't care about unborn children. The House of Saud doesn't care about theological purity. They care about power. And they found that the most reliable, renewable source of political energy is genuine faith.
Useful believers.
The most useful kind, because they never stop believing, even when the people they're fighting for stopped believing a long time ago.
Man, that sits heavy.
It should, but not in a way that makes you cynical about faith, in a way that makes you protective of it. Because if faith is real, and for billions of people it is, then it deserves to be defended from the people who would exploit it. The answer to religious manipulation isn't less religion, it's more honest religion. Religion that's self-aware enough to recognize when it's being used.
And maybe, honestly, maybe the most faithful thing you can do is ask who benefits. When someone wraps a political agenda in Scripture, just ask, who benefits from me believing this?
That's not a crisis of faith. That's faith with its eyes open.
I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's the one.